Well, on this one, we've got Bobby in of the Carolinas. He's in the South one. Who the note here says has experiences that he thinks can only be explained by paranormal experiences. Bobby, take it away, man. What's going on?
Well, this first off, how you guys doing?
Good.
I'll start by kind of agreeing with what you were saying in that last call. I'm a huge skeptic. Definitely not your typical ghost paranormal guy or anything like that. I live a pretty boring life. Coach high school football and work in the steel industry, so pretty just boring dude. So basically, back in 2011, my wife, my then girlfriend, and I moved into our first house. We lived in a couple apartments. We had lived on campus at Clemson together, and moved into our first house. And as you can imagine, as some, younger 20-year-olds, it was a pretty crappy, small little house. It was in a small little mill village here in South Carolina, upstate of South Carolina. And basically, only time anything's ever really, I guess, odd happened to me, it all kind of revolved around this home. The day we moved in, my wife and her mother were, beat myself and the people who were helping us move to the house. And they were unboxing some things and, just taking random things into the house. And my wife heard a knock on the door. So she went and answered the door. And all she can describe him as is a frail little man who was, looked to be about 80 or 90. She said he looked, very old. And this man began a conversation with her, just saying, he had lived in the house. He had an old photo. Kate, my wife, basically said it didn't even look like a photo. It was so like old and tattered. Anyway, the man went on to say, he lived in this house as a child. And I guess the picture was who she assumed was his father and a couple other kids in the photo. And odd thing is, my wife had put something on the stove, macaroni and cheese or something, and she turns to go back to the kitchen, just told the gentleman, hold on a second, went back to the kitchen to take whatever it was off the stove. It took 10 seconds. Like I said, this is a tiny house. Came back to the door, and this old man was gone, completely gone. And, again, to hear her describe it, this dude was in his 80s, 90s. It would have taken a miracle for him to have walked fast enough to get out of there, or at least off the front porch, front yard area. And then from that point, we honestly, again, huge skeptic here, started having weird things happen in the home. Old rickety home built in the 40s. We had issues with cabinets that would come open and just little things. I mean, little things that could honestly be explained by an old home. But I don't want to make it sound like a movie. Things, I guess you could say, kind of started progressing a little bit. We had a creepy basement in the house, and the basement was huge. It was the whole size of the home. And down there, there were two doors. One door, as soon as you got down the stairs and turned right, there was a door that went into the crawl space, as weird as that sounds. And basically, when you open that door, it's just right into this area with a huge mound of dirt, which the house sat on a hill, so that makes sense as to why it was like that. But there's no sense for the door to be there. There was no pipes or anything on that part of the house, just a random door. And then across the basement, there was a door that led outside. Well, over the little while we lived in that house, my wife would constantly yell at me for leaving that door open down there. And, I would know, hey, I closed that door. Or locked it. I'm sorry. It wasn't open. It just would come unlocked. And, she would yell at me, of course, saying, hey, you got to lock the door. You got to lock the door. And so my wife started having issues with nightmares. And I don't just mean nightmares. I mean like night terror style nightmares, where she would wake up in a panic, essentially. And this wasn't something she had dealt with her whole life. This wasn't something, definitely isn't something she deals with currently. They just kind of started. And I guess you can say everything kind of came to a head one specific night. There's a pretty bad storm going on outside. My wife and I had laid down to go to sleep. It was real restless that night. I don't know if it was a storm or what, but something was keeping me awake. My wife obviously went to sleep. I'm going to lay out kind of my bedroom. You picture just a kind of a normal square room, and there's a bed that kind of centers the wall as soon as you walk in, and then there's two corners exposed to the room. So we're laying in bed, and I can hear my wife, she's obviously dreaming, kind of whimpering a little bit. I still don't know what the dream was about to this day. She doesn't remember. But there was kind of an uneasy feeling, kind of almost like a nauseated feeling that came over myself. While I'm sitting there in bed, and I just couldn't get comfortable, couldn't get in a place where I could go to sleep. So anyway, like I said, real strong lightning storm, starts flashing so hard it's lighting up the room. And, out of nowhere, my dog, who is a fairly calm dog, stands up in the bed. And when he stands up in the bed, he starts growling and snarling. And I don't mean like just a regular little low belly growl that dogs do. I mean, we're talking like rabid, drool coming out, snarling. And he's pointing into one corner of the room. In the very moment, is the best way I can explain it, lightning hits the room. As lightning hits the room, in the left corner of the room, you can clearly see the shape of what I would consider, at the time I thought, a man. And if you could picture a man on his knees with kind of his head down, and if you could picture him stand up and roll his body up like he's standing up. As second that happens, my dog starts flipping out. And there was no features. He was just dark, completely black against the room. My dog flips out, starts barking like I've never heard him bark before. Like I said, snarling, drooling, going nuts. And he goes to take a step forward, and in that very split moment, my wife wakes up screaming. So it jarred me. I looked at my wife, took my eyes off that, whatever that was, and turned back. It's gone. Well, then my wife and I both hear footsteps in the hallway. And from our bed, if you look out into the hallway, you can see under the basement door. And what we saw was the picture, I guess you say picture, I don't know what you'd say, a shadow under the door getting smaller as it was going down the stairs. So at the time, like I said, I was young. I didn't have guns and stuff like that to protect the home yet. My dog and I both jumped out of bed, ran to the basement door. I literally was ready to call the police. Thought there's going to be a man walking down my stairs. And we go down there, and there's nobody as soon as we turn the lights on. And all of a sudden, we feel a breeze. We go down there, and our back door, the one that always we said unlocks, was completely wide open. Now, mind you, there's a rainstorm, thunder and lightning. Mm-hmm. Definitely a night where I'd locked the door and shut it. But it was wide open. To this day, scariest experience I've ever had in my life. Only experience I've really ever had in my life. I say paranormal because I don't know what else to attribute it to. We moved, I'll tell you the truth, we didn't stay another night in that house. We woke up, we went to my parents' house, we moved out of that house, broke lease maybe 3 days later. And like I said, didn't stay another night in that house. When we finally got everything moved out of the house into our new home, my wife had one more nightmare, and it was about that house. And she's never had another significant nightmare, night terror style nightmare again. So again, don't know what to attribute it to. Just an experience we had. And, people all the time say they want to experience the paranormal, they want to experience ghosts. And Until you do it, it's not something you want to experience. And again, I don't know what it was, but I do believe in good and evil, and everything about that felt as evil as you'll ever get. That's really the only way I can explain it.
Well, that's a whole lot to unpack there, man. That does sound really terrifying. I'm sorry that you and your wife went through that. I mean, there was a lot going on there, and I am somebody who has lived in some old houses, and I understand how frustrating and creaky and weird they can be, and with the doors not working, and this is just a really, really common thing, and it's even freaked me out when that's happened. As far as what seems like the climax of the story, that night when you can't sleep and your dog is snarling and the lightning strikes and you see the shadowy figure and your wife wakes up screaming, how long had you been living in the house when this happened? Just quick question.
I'll be completely honest with you. I would say, Callie, I don't, honest to God, I don't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2.5, 3 months.
Okay. And would you also say that since the first day with the old man that your wife had a conversation with, were you both sort of feeling a little off and uneasy? Like, was that the first thing where it's like, whoa, that was weird, and then there's all this other normal stuff with the house going on?
Right. I know it. Yeah. No. For me personally, like I said, I don't know how to explain it other than that stuff. That type of stuff has never crossed my mind. Mm-hmm. When my wife told me that story originally, I thought a man walked up to the house, talked to her. Mm-hmm. Never thought another thing about that at that time. To me, it was just a gentleman walked up to the house, knocked on the door, talked to her, and that was the end of it. Mm-hmm. In retrospect, unpacking it years later, I say, okay, that's a little strange.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in the moment. No, to answer your question, no, okay. It wasn't something that even crossed my mind.
Yeah. I guess I wanted to ask to sort of just get an idea of like the psychological state of both, you and your partner at this time while this is going on. But, I can tell you, so I have 4 cats and 4 dogs, and we had a really big storm the other day here. At one point, the wind was howling, and my dogs woke me up, just barking and freaking out. And I woke up, and I could immediately feel that, okay, my heartbeat's racing. Like, I've got chills down my spine. Something is going on if my dogs are alerting me to this. A branch had fallen and hit the door, and so they thought somebody was there. Another time, my dog started snarling and freaking out because she saw a statue that looked like a person and it wasn't moving, and it freaked her out. I can see how when you've got, you're there, the dog is there, and your wife is there screaming, it's sort of like all 3 of you are sort of confirming that something is going on when perhaps maybe it's not. I think immediately when I think of, the lightning and sort of the shadowy figure, I don't know how many times I've thought that I've seen a shadow in the corner of my room, and it's either a shadow of something that is outside that is just not that, that's projecting a shadow in the corner, or it's my clothes because I'm bad at doing laundry. But I can see how if you took that very reasonable explanation of, yeah, there was probably something outside where that lightning made it look like a moving figure. Coupled with your dog freaking out and your wife waking up screaming, I'm sorry, but if like my boyfriend is awake and my dog is freaking out and lightning almost hits the house, I will wake up screaming. I think that's a very normal response. I just think that when you really separate out all of this, I have a difficult time believing that this obviously must be paranormal and that there's not a bunch of different explanations, especially considering how much our brains fill in information that we don't see and sort of look for patterns that aren't there, and we can be so easily deceived. What are your thoughts, Kenneth?
So the thing that stood out to me was, you told the story, and rather than try to, I don't want to try to explain away the story, with some sort of like naturalist or materialist type of explanation, because I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But you used the word paranormal, and you said, I don't know what else it could be. And right there is where you lose me, because that's what's known as an argument from incredulity. It's a named fallacy. It is a reliable way. So let me ask you this before I pull on this string. So when I say fallacy, do you know what that means?
Yes.
Okay, so for people in the audience who may not, I'm just going to quickly summarize. So if someone has a conclusion, but somewhere in their reasoning there's a fallacy, what that means is that we can't know that their conclusion is true. It doesn't necessarily mean their conclusion is wrong. It just means we cannot be justified in concluding that it's true. And to circle back to the previous call, again, I'm like a broken record. If we cannot be justified in knowing that something's true, I don't think that we should be saying that it is so. So when you say something, it's this, it's X, because I don't know what else it could be, that's a fallacy, because you don't know what else it could be. So concluding that it's X.
And my response to that, and again, I'm not one to argue this, because my exact response would be circling back to your last call and tell you, I don't know. And I'm fully okay not knowing, because I'll be honest with you, I never want to experience it again to find out or to test the theory. Our brains do crazy things. You can 1000% make things up. You can 1000% see things that aren't there, and your brain can, like she said, fill in the blanks. The thing for me is in the moment, it feels so real, Mm-hmm. Could I have been jarred awake from a dream? Maybe. But it would have been one of those instantaneous moments. You wake up and you're living the dream, if you will. And all I mean by that is your brain manifests something that could be happening, and then you wake up into the situation, if you will. I don't know that that's not the case. The only thing of all this I can't explain, like you were saying, with shadows possibly outside, for one, the density of what I saw, the density of the figure, if you will, shadow, whatever it may have been, wasn't consistent with that of a branch outside. It seemed to have, and again, I'm not saying for sure paranormal or for sure not. What I'm saying, the things that I would justify it being something as I never want to experience again, is it seemed very dense. The I don't know if I'm saying the right word here. The figure that stood is the best way I can say it, stood up, or the shadow that moved, or whatever we want to call it, wasn't consistent with something outside of the room. This was something that was very much inside the room. Is the best way I can kind of explain it, or describe it, I should say.
Well,
and then the only other thing I can explain by taking your theory, it could have been a shadow. Absolutely, it could have, 1000%. And my brain could be manifesting the rest of this. However,
I'm not offering any explanations.
Consistent with,
just to be clear, I'm not offering any explanations at all. I'm saying, when are we justified in arriving at a conclusion? Is all I'm asking. I don't know if it was your brain doing shit. Sure. I don't know if it was a ghost. I don't know if it was fucking Bigfoot, man. I don't know what it was. But the burden of proof is on the one making the claim.
Oh, sure. I get it 100%.
So
100%.
On the call, you said this thing about like how people say they want to experience ghosts, they want to experience the paranormal, but when you experience it, it isn't something that you'd want to experience again. That sounds to me like you're saying that you're concluding that you had some sort of paranormal experience. And I don't know how you get from A to B here. It's just like the last call. Sure.
Well, yes. And I fully agree with you, because I listened to you on the last call and I agreed where you were going with that. And again, I'm not definitively saying it was. All I'm saying is in the moment, and looking back at the moment as well, what do I have proof it was paranormal? No. Do I have proof it wasn't? No. I mean, I don't. Would I love to think it was a shadow outside? Sure. Then all this, looking back at that story would make me feel a lot better if it was a shadow, a tree branch, or whatever it could have been.
But our conclusions should never be based on what's going to make us feel good. Our conclusions should be based on where the evidence leads.
Right. And in a situation like this, the only evidence I have, and the only way I could do this would get my wife to corroborate the story, would be that when we both got up, we heard and saw the same thing going down the basement stairs.
Sure.
Now, that's also not to say somebody wasn't in my basement, to be honest with you. And maybe that my dog heard that. But there were very audible footsteps, and there was a figure, a shape, going down my basement stairs against the light of the basement. So it could be possible that there was somebody in my basement that night.
I mean, but
before I could get down the stairs, he got outside.
I don't know what's possible, and it sounds like neither do you at this point. I mean, it's like,
sure.
And so that's. Have you ever heard of Russell's teapot?
No.
Genevieve, have you heard of Russell's teapot?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, if we're talking about the same teapot, it's that I can say that there is indeed an invisible teapot that is circling the sun, but when you look at it, you're not going to see it because it's invisible, but I know that it's there. Is that roughly, am I on the right track?
Yeah, there's different formulations that I've heard of Russell's teapot. The way that I was going to go with it was, say that there was someone made the claim that there was a teapot that was orbiting the sun, or I've heard it orbiting Mars. I've heard people say orbiting Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So all the Bertrand Russell stands out there, don't yell at me if I'm getting this a little bit wrong. But the question is, when are you justified in believing that this teapot does in fact exist? If you can't prove it's there and you can't prove it's not there, when are we okay saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure that teapot's up there? I'm wondering if we lost Bobby.
You there, Bobby?
Nope. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry. So you were saying, when do we conclude that it's there or not there? Correct?
Yeah, just when are we justified in? I mean, and we could even take it a step further. We could, imagine that, people on our planet are arguing over the properties of this teapot. Oh, well, it's red. No, it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
And people are spending all their time, trying to, it's a China teapot. No, it's not. It's more like a ceramic, like a French thing. Like, but nobody's seen it. We don't know anything about it. We can't
mm-hmm.
prove that it's there. We can't prove that it's not. When are we justified coming to conclusions is the big $1 million question.
Well, yeah. And I think in a situation like this, honestly, I mean, I don't think there is a conclusion, I don't think I'll ever know. And I say it again, I'm okay not knowing, because one, the feeling that gave me that night, it's not something I want to feel again.
Well, and your feeling is real. I mean, I want to make sure that we're not in any way trying to invalidate your experience. I mean,
sure. No, I'm not. No, I get you. You don't have to explain that. I understand.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like you're approaching it from a pretty healthy place. I mean, if you had me sort of, with an eyebrow up over here going, well, wait a minute, is he saying that he had a paranormal experience, or that he had something happen that he's not sure what happened? Because the call screen thing says has experiences he thinks can only be explained by paranormal, but that doesn't sound to me like where you're at now that we've talked for 20 minutes. No.
I was just trying to give him a quick, hey, this is what's going on. I know when I reached out upon your request, it was just a story, a story that had happened to me, and an experience that had happened to me. Do I know that it's paranormal? No, absolutely not. Like I said, somebody could have easily been in my basement that night, and what I saw was my brain, causing that to happen. All I know for sure, well, the things I know for sure, without a doubt, is the way it made me feel, and the fact that there was definitely audible sounds that night that were not made up, because it's consistent with both myself and my wife. And the shape going down the stairs. Those are the three things that I know for a fact. You know, one, the way I felt, the audible sounds, and then the pure visual of a shadow going down the stairs.
I'm going to push back just a
silhouette,
smidge.
a silhouette going down the stairs.
Do you know why, witnesses and trials, that for just, procedurally, it's a good idea to keep them separate and not talking to each other about what they thought they saw?
Well, so stories can't be misconstrued and brought together. Like, so my story can't influence someone else's story or one jury to another.
Right. I mean, because when you said the thing about your wife and you've seen the same thing, you might have. I don't know. It might be the case that over time the stories melded, because that is a thing that happens too. I don't know, but it sounds like you're thinking about this in the right way. I hate to cut us off, Bobby, because you've been a great caller, but there's a couple more that we want to try to get to with the time we've got. But yeah, thank you very much for calling in.
Sure. Absolutely, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Yeah. And I'll listen around more. Thank you.
Sweet. Thanks. Have a good one. Yeah. Good call. You have any thoughts, Genevieve, on Bobby and his haunted house?
I mean, I don't blame him for, packing his shit and getting out of there, because that's a pretty reasonable response when you've been really freaked out. Like, we've evolved to have fear. It's a very healthy emotion. You don't know what's outside of your cave, and if you're uncertain, your hair should raise. Yeah, I think he is approaching it pretty well. I don't think that he's really coming to conclusions that this is the only explanation. I think, just like you said, I think that he's in a pretty good place with that.
There's a thing that you just reminded me of that I like to talk about from time to time, which is that people have this misconception that, like evolutionary, wise, that we're sort of, hardwired for being rational creatures, and we're not. And it touches on just what you were talking about. Like, yeah, there's this whole thing people talk about of like, if there's two sort of pre-human beings walking through the jungle, and one that sees the bush shaking and is like, there's a fucking dragon in there, and takes off. And the other one's like, no, I'm going to stick around and investigate. I don't want to jump to the wrong conclusion. The fearful, superstitious person is frankly going to be better adapted to survival. So we are, if anything, more hardwired to be superstitious and fearful.